Welcome to day 16 of the Gandel program. A quick one tonight. I have a bit of a sore throat developing, and I'm getting up early in the morning to go and look at the Dome of the Rock. So better get as many hours sleep as I can, but can't stop and do that before I tell you about the day that I had today. We started Yad Vashem with a lecture by Yehuda Bauer. He's pretty much the preeminent Holocaust historian. He's written 44 books on the subject. He's 92 years old. He's been looking at the subject for 50 or 60 years in a scholarly way. And it was just incredible to hear his point of view, talking through new research, especially research that was countering some of the things he'd written decades beforehand, as new evidence had been uncovered. Talked about Professor Dreyfus, Harvey Dreyfus, who used a lot of the kind of unknown written accounts by the people involved in the Warsaw Uprising. And so the official kind of writings that we have had talked about it being about 750 in number, and they were kind of strategically organized in a very military kind of way. And these we found out, and she worked out, this was information that the people leading the uprising had given to the Polish underground, asking for weapons. So they'd overstated their numbers, and they'd overstated their military capability, so that the Polish underground, who weren't particularly helpful to those in the Warsaw Ghetto, would give them weapons and think that they were a greater threat. What she found out was that they were largely members of the youth movement, young people, 17, 18, at the most 24, 25, who had risen up and were seeking weapons with as much as they could. And more people would have joined, but they just did not have the weapons and therefore the capability. And so, he talked about some of the misconceptions people have about the Holocaust regarding the number of Jews who were murdered, and various other things that people take as gospel, and that's not actually correct. So the number 6 million was originally given by a German commander in 1944, and somebody saw it and assumed that because they're Germans and they're very technical and they wrote everything down, it must be accurate, and it's not. So there's a bit of debate about whether this matters historically. But a couple of different organisations, Yad Vashem themselves, did a full investigation into this and found the numbers somewhere between 5.6 and 5.7 million. And so, as Yehuda Bauer said, he didn't want to kill 300,000 or 400,000 people with words who didn't die. So he kind of pushed this idea that we need to be as accurate as possible, as objectively true as we can get when looking at the Holocaust. So that was fascinating. Great question and answer session at the end as well. We then were joined by a professor from Bir Illal College, University, who looked at Islam and the history of Islam and Jews going back right back to Muhammad, and discussing the issues that they had and the writings of the Quran, and where a lot of not anti-Semitism, because Arabs see themselves as Semites, so they say we're not anti-Semitic, we're Semitic. So anti-Jewish feeling comes from. That was an interesting lecture. Wrote some notes, lots to think about that. Then we had self-directed time. So there was a couple of professors that were coming back that we'd heard from earlier in the program, as well as time to work on our projects individually if we so desired. I went with Liz Elsby into the art gallery, the Holocaust Art Gallery, and that was fascinating. We spent an hour and a half in there, and she looked at different artists and the art that they'd produced in the Holocaust and what we can learn about that. And some of these stories were just beautiful and touching, heartbreaking. I'm definitely going to make some videos about some of these artists. So, you can hear about them in the future. Following this, we looked at some photos. Liz took us into the photographic exhibit, which I'm going to look at a bit more on Wednesday. And that was also very interesting. And then Professor Alan Rosen came back and we looked more at some literature and had a question and answer session with him about how to incorporate literature into the different units that we're doing. That was incredible. He's a brilliant, wise man, and just fascinating to listen to and to talk with. Really enjoyed every session with him. It was great. And then we came back to the hotel, had an early dinner, and we'd been invited to one of the survivors who gave her testimony, Rena, her house. She invited everyone over to her house. We've been a bit decimated with people getting sore throats and the like, so some people went to bed early, but about a dozen or so of us headed over there and spent the evening with her, had some tea and some cake, and chatted about stuff. And that was just amazing to be able to sit in a Jewish home and of a survivor of the Holocaust and talk with her and share with her how we enjoyed the program or what we thought about it and our experiences and discussing issues with Israel, etc., etc. It was a wonderful night. It's now, however, 11:15. I'm getting up early so that I can go down to Dome of the Rock. So I'll leave it there, and I'll speak to you after tomorrow. Well, tomorrow.